Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to the Gaming Rules Top 10 Games of All Time video. Now, before any of you get excited and think Paul's finally got round to recording his top 10 games of all time, I haven't. This is not my top 10 games of all time. These are the games voted on by my Patreon supporters as their top 10 games. Now, many of my Patreon supporters took part in the poll. All of the results got entered into a spreadsheet, and one of my Patreon supporters, Harry, thank you very much, Harry, compiled all of the results together and came up with what are the top 10 games, and I'm going to be going through them. Now, I'm doing this video is being produced in January 2019. The voting took place in the last 2 months of 2018, and this is something that I want to do every year moving forward. So it's going to be the next goal of my Patreon campaign. If you enjoy the content that I create and you're not already a Patreon supporter, then please consider supporting me over at patreon.com/gaming rules. Much of the content that I create is paid for through the Patreon. So by contributing to my Patreon, you will help support the show, help me get new equipment, and help me produce more content like this. So anyway, let's get on and find out what are the top 10 games. Number 10 is a game which I'm very happy that is on this list, and that is Through the Ages. Now, Through the Ages first came out in 2006, designed by Vláďa Švatel, and originally published by Czech Board Games, which was a company that was formed in 2006, did Through the Ages, and then basically split. And Czech Board Games, CBG, continued and did other games, while another half formed a new company called Czech Games Edition that went on to become very big and do some other little not very well-known games like Codenames. Now, many of you will know that I have a professional and personal relationship with the people at CGE, and this is not why this game is on my favourite games list. Even though this isn't my list, Through the Ages is one of my favourite games of all time. The game came out, as I say, in 2006. And I remember going to Essen that year, and I think it was Chewy. Remind me tell me if I'm wrong, Chewy. But said to me, "Oh, there's a new Civilization game coming out," and I love Civilization games. I mean, I grew up playing Avalon Hill's Civilization in the 80s, and I've always had a thing for Civilization games. So Through the Ages came out, and I was absolutely blown away. In 2007, I went back to Essen, met up with the people from CGE and was a complete fanboy. Just like, I love your games, oh, you're brilliant, these are excellent. I remember speaking to Vláďa at Essen in 2007 and saying, how long must it have taken you to create this game? And I think he said to me at the time, 3 months. I'm pretty sure it didn't take him 3 months. Maybe he misunderstood the question. But anyway, since then, obviously, I developed a relationship with CGE, which ended up becoming a professional relationship with CGE. And it's fair to say that without CGE, I wouldn't be where I am now and Gaming Rules wouldn't have started. But anyway, Through the Ages, let's talk about it. It's a Civilization game. It's very heavy. It's very complex. Your first game with 4 players will take 8 hours to play. How is this game so popular? How is this game so highly rated on BGG? I mean, personally, it's a masterpiece of a game. But the complexity and the playtime do mean it has a niche audience. You know, most people these days don't want to be playing hugely, massively complex games. So I'm surprised it is as high and as popular as it is. In my personal opinion, it's in the right place because I think it's an amazing game. But it is quite inaccessible in terms of the barrier to entry because of the amount of rules complexity and obviously how long it takes to play. So if you're not into your heavy complex games, I would steer clear about this one. But if you like your medium to heavy games and you like Civilization games, if you haven't tried it yet, then go and check it out. The new version that came out in 2015, which is Through the Ages, a new story of Civilization, fixed a number of the balance issues that were in the original version of the game, and also there is an app. The app, in my opinion, is hands down the best board game app that is available. CGE Digital have done an amazing job with the app. They spent 4 years working on it. I mean, so many other apps come out of board games on, you know, computers and whatever, and they're full of bugs, or they don't have multiplayer, or the AI is not very good. CGE decided that they were going to wait. Vláďa's a perfectionist and they weren't going to release the game until it was ready. And they worked and worked and worked on it, and the app is absolutely fantastic. I will always prefer playing the game with the physical pieces, But to be honest, I've not done that in 3 years because I don't have the time to do it. Whereas the app allows me to play the game against people all around the world, friends or people at CGE. And yeah, so if you're interested, have a look at the app. If you haven't already, if you've got the original game but you haven't invested in the app, go and invest in the app. The solo play of it is fantastic. The different challenges, the AI is really tough, and the multiplayer interface is really good as well. So anyway, that's Through the Ages, number 10, as voted on by my Patreon supporters. Number 9 is another of my favourite games, and this is Lisboa. Vital Lacerda, Ian O'Toole doing the artwork, Eagle Gryphon Games doing the production. Now, I was professionally involved in this game as well, but again, putting that aside, Lisboa, I think, is a fantastic game. It's possibly my favourite Vital Lacerda game. I can't decide between this and Vinhos Deluxe. Vinhos Deluxe might have the edge on it, but this is a very good game. Again, it's heavy. Some people would class it as medium to heavy. Some people would class it as super heavy. I class it as a heavy game. Also, your first game is going to take probably about 3.5, 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer. But that's because it's a heavy, complex game. There's a lot going on. I mean, Vital Lacerda games for me normally take me 3 games. My first game, I'm just fumbling around, trying to learn the rules, get everything wrong, and have no real idea. Second game, I start to piece things together. From game 3 onwards, that's when I can sit down. And at that point, oh, the sweetness, it's just so good. But a lot of people don't want to spend that time and investment to get to that stage. They want to sit down, they want to play a game, they want to be competitive from game 1, and they want to understand what's going on from game 1. That's fine. But heavier, complex games do require a little bit of investment in there. So if you like Vital Lacerda games, or even if you haven't tried any of his games, strongly recommend Lisboa. The theme is extremely strong in the game. Vital himself lives in Lisboa, and this game is about a particular time in history, 1755, and a lot of the theme comes across in the game itself, in what you're doing. But it's surrounded by a really nice, heavy, crunchy Euro with lots of interesting decisions. So that's Lisboa, Vital Lacerda, Eagle Gryphon Games, and is number 9 on my Patreon supporters top 10 list. Number 8 is Castles of Burgundy, which used to be, for a long time, my favourite Stefan Feld game. And for those of you who don't know, Stefan Feld is one of my favourite designers. I love his designs, I have played a lot of his games, and I love most of them. There's something just so nice about a Stefan Feld game, because I'm a mechanics person. If there's a theme in a game, okay, that's nice, but to me, it's all about the mechanics. And Castles of Burgundy is a classic example of a game with practically zero theme, but I love the mechanics of how it plays out. Now, the game has come under quite a lot of criticism over the years. It first came out in 2011. It's a relatively cheap game compared to a lot of modern board games, but the production quality isn't great, the artwork is very bland, the cardboard's a bit thin, and things like that. Putting that aside, I think the game is fantastic. Now, a lot of people think that Castles of Burgundy plays best at 2 players. I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that, because in a 2-player game, you only see about half of the tiles, and therefore a not standard mix of tiles is going to come out. So, and in this game, you get bonuses for collecting similar types of animals. So if you decide at the start of the game to start, you'll take a chicken tile and you'll think, oh, okay, I'll start getting chickens, and then no more chickens come out, then that can seriously affect your score. In a 3 or 4 play game, more tiles come out, although, of course, if you're last in turn order, you're not going to get those tiles, but that's down to you. In a 2-play game, whether those tiles are in the game or not is outside of your control, and that's what I don't like. But anyway, Castles of Burgundy, really good. There's lots of different player boards available for it. Lots of little mini expansions. There's a card game version, which I didn't like, to be honest. There's a dice game version, which I haven't tried. I believe there's a team version of it. And I think there's a solo mode of it. So yeah, very popular game, very highly rated on Board Game Geek. My Patreon supporters, top 8 game of all time. Number 7 on the list is Brass. Now, they didn't say whether it was Brass Lancashire or Brass Birmingham, or even the original game of Brass, which came out in 2007. I'm pretty sure it's not the original, although Brass Lancashire is pretty much the same as the original, with I think one small tweak, whereas Brass Birmingham takes on the mechanics and actually has a number of tweaks that make it quite a different game. What I find interesting is that half of the people I know prefer Brass Lancashire and half of them prefer Brass Birmingham. I'll be honest, I've not actually played Brass Lancashire or Brass Birmingham yet. I really want to. It's just I haven't got around to it. I did play the original Brass in 2007 and I wasn't too keen on it. And when I look back at why I wasn't keen on it, it doesn't really make sense. First of all, the original game, the rulebook really wasn't good. So we weren't sure about a number of things. We weren't sure whether we were playing it right. But also I found the game a little bit above my complexity level, and that's the confusing thing, because I play Viticulture games and I play Through the Ages. I play games that are far more complex than Brass, but there were a few bits about it that just didn't gel at the time and didn't seem to sit in my head. Now that I've got the new version, I do have a copy of Brass Lancashire and I've read through the rulebook, it all now makes sense. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is probably a medium game, not even a medium to heavy game, but I just haven't had a chance to try it yet. So I am looking forward to trying it. I think Roxley Games have done an absolutely stellar job with the new version. Production quality, the artwork, I think is excellent. I mean, artwork is very subjective, but I like it. It is very dark, but I'm from up north and it's grim up north, so that fits. And yeah, so yeah, Brass Lancashire or Brass Birmingham, whichever. I don't know which they voted on. They've just bunched them all together as Brass. Number 6 on the list is Viticulture, and Viticulture is another game which I'm not surprised made this list because it is a very popular game. I don't own a copy of Viticulture. It is a game which I think I possibly should have in my collection, but I got a few friends that have got a copy of it and they live local, so if I ever wanted to play it, then I could obviously get them to bring their copy round and then borrow it. So Viticulture. I've played it a few times. I like the game, but one thing about Viticulture that I found is it's got better over time. A little bit like an aging wine, maybe. The original game of Viticulture, I actually don't think is that good. The first time I played it was when the game came out, and it has these cards in it, and you don't get many cards in the game, and some of the cards are really good at the start of the game and terrible at the end, or really good at the end of the game and terrible at the start, but you've no control over when you get them. Now, the Tuscany expansion fixed that by introducing cards with 2 different abilities on, one of which was good at the start of the game, one of which was the end. And this is what I'm saying. What's confusing about Viticulture is that there's Viticulture, then there's Tuscany, then there's Essential Edition, then there's Tuscany Essential, and I'm like, I, as an outsider, if I was thinking, oh, shall I get Viticulture? I've no idea which one to get. It's a bit confusing that there are so many, and I don't quite know why. Now, well, obviously they've refined it, and the original game was apparently broken because you could win the game quite easily by using the visitor centre, I think, and without actually making any wine, which was not really... So they fixed that. There's been a number of fixes along the way. So I think if you do play Viticulture now with the right cards and the right expansions, then it's a great game. It's a really good game. Now, Viticulture gets a lot of credit for being very thematic, and I'm not sure about that. I mean, for a start, there are some mechanics in the game which are thematic, but there are other mechanics in the game which are not thematic at all. They're anti-thematic or counter, whatever. So the way that grapes age, well, no, grapes don't age. And the way that wine is not, and Jamie Stegmaier has actually said that, at some point you have to compromise and you have to leave theme behind and just get a game that works. Absolutely. As I say, Viticulture could be rebranded into Growing Space Dinosaurs, and I'd still play it and I'd still like it because it's the mechanics of the game that I like. The fact that it's about winemaking, okay, well, that's quite nice. I think a lot of people just like the idea of the theme of winemaking and therefore go, oh, the game's great and has got lots of theme. Anyway, yeah, so as I say, theme doesn't make much of a difference to me. It's the mechanics of the game that I like. But yeah, that's Viticulture. Number 5 on the list, I am a bit surprised about. Not surprised that it's on the list, but surprised that it's this low. This is Terraforming Mars. Originally published in 2016, Fricks Games, Stronghold Games. Terraforming Mars is a massively popular game. A few of my friends, it's their favourite game of all time. Everywhere I go, I see it being played. It's been talked about everywhere. There's 13 expansions planned for it, I think, and there's like 5 out already at the moment. It's a massively, massively popular game, and I'm surprised it was only at number 5. Now, my experience with Terraforming Mars is a little bit unusual and a little bit interesting. I think it's interesting. So when the game first came out, a friend of mine, Patrick Hillier, got into it and was playing it a lot and saying how amazing it was, and he was teaching everybody. And everybody was talking about it. So I was very keen to try it myself. I went over to BGGCon in 2016 and we'd arranged a 5-player game of it. Patrick was going to teach and I had one of the slots. And that was at one of the points in my life where my sleeping issues really kicked in and I don't think I'd slept for 3 days. So Patrick sat down to teach us. I'd been demoing all day long and I thought, I'm not going to survive this. My brain is not working. I'm probably going to fall asleep during the game. I'm going to let them down. And since I felt bad that I'd reserved the space, I came up with a master plan. A certain person by the name of Isaac Childress had played Terraforming Mars and wanted to play it again. And I said, well, you can join us in our game if you want to, and me and you will kind of play together. And then when I undoubtedly fall asleep or I'm not able to carry on, he can take over from me. As it was, I played about 2 or 3 turns, fell asleep at the table, and then basically Isaac played the whole game. So that was the only time I've actually played the physical board game of Terraforming Mars. And I didn't really play, I only played a few turns. Since then, I've managed to avoid playing it. And I say managed to avoid, I've not deliberately tried to avoid playing it, but there's so many games out there, so many games I want to play. And it got to the point with Terraforming Mars where everybody that I knew had played it so many times, I would be going into the game and I would feel uncomfortable. And it's not to say that the people I play with would make me feel uncomfortable, but when they're playing quick and they know what they're doing and they're taking the right cards and I have no idea what I'm doing, I would feel uncomfortable because I'd be a bit out of my depth. So I've avoided playing the game. Now recently I got the app. The app has been released, it's currently on Steam. It's notoriously full of bugs. Thankfully, the version I've got, 1.37 I think it is now or something, I've not really seen any bugs. One game has crashed. In about 40 games that I've played, one game has crashed. So it's fine. The interface is really, really nice. The multiplayer interface needs a little bit of work, but I am playing a lot of games now on the app. And tonight, I'm filming this at the moment on a Wednesday. Tonight, I'm going around to Mark's house and playing my first ever game of Terraforming Mars. Now that I've played the app a lot, I feel a lot more comfortable with it. I'm still going to come last. I don't mind that. But it will be nice to play the actual game. Now, the game itself, as I say, very highly rated, very popular. Production quality is not that great. The production quality of the game isn't that great. The graphic design, I think the graphic design, I don't know, it looks a bit, I think it could have been a bit nicer, but that's just my personal opinion. The game itself looks fantastic and I am looking forward to playing my first game tonight. So that's my Patreon supporters' number 5 game of their best games of all time. Number 4 is another of my favourite games, and this is Great Western Trail. Great Western Trail came out in 2016. It's designed by Alexander Pfister, and it was my favourite game of 2016. I absolutely love the game, even though the first 4 times I played it, I played with a wrong rule and it completely broke the game. Still loved it. I'm now playing with the correct rules. It's a medium to heavy, solid, crunchy Euro game. There is a setting in the game in that you're cowboys moving cows to Kansas, and you could probably thematically explain a couple of the rules. For me, the game isn't really that thematic, but I don't care about that. The mechanics of the game are fantastic. One thing I absolutely love about the game is there are so many different strategies that you can take. You can go, lots of cows, you can go your train to the end, you can do so many different things, and I have seen so many different strategies win in the game and do well. An expansion for it came out last year, which I haven't had a chance to try yet, but people have said I'm going to love it. I love the base game, so I'm probably going to really like the expansion as well, but the base game for me is just fantastic. When the game first came out, I remember there was some negativity about the game because people were taking 4 hours to play their first game, and it isn't a 4-hour game. Now, it took us 3.5 to 4 hours for our first game. But after that, we can now play a 4-player game in about 2 to 2.5 hours. So the people who go, oh, it's a really long game. Yeah, it is when you're learning it because there's a lot going on. But once you've played the game a couple of times, it does flow really quickly, especially if you do what we do, which is start taking your turn while the other player is finishing their turn. So they move to a space and they start doing that space and I'll start taking my turn. It's very rare that something they do will interfere with what I'm doing. If you do that, the game goes really quick. And yeah, the playtime does come down. So yeah, 2.5 hour game, Great Western Trail, absolutely love it. One of the best games of all time, in my opinion. Moving on to number 3, and this is another of my favourite games that I don't have in my collection and I should have. This is Concordia. The original version of Concordia came out in 2013, designed by Mac Gerdts, and Concordia, I think, is just fantastic. Now, Concordia has its people who don't like it, and let's start with the theme. The theme is trading in the Mediterranean, which is the joke theme that we all, joke about in games that have no theme. And sure, there's no theme in this game. It's mechanical, and I love the mechanics of this game. The fact that it is trading in the Mediterranean, well, as I say, it could be anything, and I'd still enjoy the game, and I'd still like playing the game. The way that the cards work in this game, I really enjoy. So you have the mechanic where here's your cards, and you have a hand of cards, and every player starts with the same hand of cards, and you play the cards and you do what the action says, and then you play another card and you do what the action says, and eventually you'll play your Tribune card and you'll get all your cards back. And until you play that card, you don't get them back. And the more you have in your discard pile when you play it, then you'll get a bonus. You will pick up extra cards during the game, which are improved versions of the cards that you already have. So that's quite nice. But the clever bit is the cards that you pick up also determine your score for the game. Every card that you pick up also has on it how you're going to score points. And that's the thing which catches some people out. I have seen some people have really negative opinions about this game after their first game. So for example, they'll play against me and they'll be going, oh, I'll move around here and I'll do that and I'll pick up these cards and I'll do that. And then at the end of the game, I will put my cards out and I'll go, right, this one is 15 points, this one is 12 points, this one is 9. And they'll be like, oh, this one's 2 and this one's 3. And it's like, yeah, the cards that you pick up are they're the things that determine your score. And you need to balance that with the actual actions of the cards. Just so good. Now, Concordia, as like most Mac Gerdts games, the rules are relatively very streamlined, but they're relatively short. They're like 4 pages of rules or something crazy. It's just on your turn, you play a card and do what it says, and then do something else, and then here's what all the cards do, and here's how you score. And that's it. But it's putting it all together in the game. It's just really clever. So that's Concordia. There's multiple expansions for it. There's Venus, there's Salsa, there's all sorts of things. I've not played, and there's different maps available. I've not played many of them. I've just played the base game. But it's a game that I will rarely say no to and probably should have in my collection. The game which is number 2 on my Patreon's top 10 games of all time is Gloom Haven. And there really isn't anything about Gloom Haven that I haven't already said. I could go on for ages about Gloom Haven and what it is. I've recently done my top 5 games of 2017. And if you haven't seen that yet, please go and check it out. Gloom Haven is on there. I'm not going to say where, but I do talk about it a lot in that video. Gloom Haven for me is an absolute masterpiece of a game. To say that Gloom Haven has changed my life is completely true, because our Gloom Haven group has been meeting up now for over 2 years. We meet up regularly. That group has become a group of social friends. My partner, Vicky, who isn't really into playing games that much, well, she's part of our Gloom Haven group. I am playing more games with her now than I ever was before, and she's now part of that, and it's just great. Also, I played D&D for 25 years. I'm an ex-role player, and although Gloom Haven is a board game, it scratches that fantasy role-playing game itch. I'm not playing a character, I'm not role-playing at all in the game, but I am going on adventures. There is a story, and I think the story in the game is fantastic. There are scenarios, you do a scenario, you can level up your character. It's got those elements of an RPG that I quite like. The branching storyline, it's just, the game is epic. There's so much content in there. I've always maintained that if another publisher had created this game, they would have spread out the content over 5 years, and the end product would have probably been about £500 or something like that. As it is, Isaac has put in so much content. I mean, we've been playing it for 2 years and 2 months, and we have scratched the surface, but I don't know, we've probably touched about a third of the content. There's so much stuff in there, and we're still enjoying it, and it's just excellent. So that's Gloom Haven. my Patreon supporters' number 2 game of all time, one of my favourite games of all time. Yeah. And moving on to number 1, the game which was voted on by my Patreon supporters, and when we put all the results together, it came out as their number 1 game, and that is Scythe, which is a game which I haven't played that much, and I really do need to play more because I'm undecided on the game. So this is going to be a bit unusual because a lot of the other games that I've spoken about, I've had things to say about. Scythe, I'm not sure about. Let's talk about the things that I do know. Designed by Jamie Stegmaier, published by Stonemaier Games, looks fantastic. I mean, production quality, artwork, graphic design, rulebook, everything about it looks great. And if you play with the deluxe resource components, which I have once or twice, it's just gorgeous. I mean, you know, for me, like I've said before, the game is the game. It's the mechanics of the game. But if you give me a game with blank hexes and white pieces of paper and cubes, I'm not going to enjoy it as much as a game with gorgeous artwork and miniatures and, you know, the deluxe resource components. So the look and feel of a game, for me, does add to the overall experience of how it plays out. And Scythe looks fantastic. Now, the other things about the game that make it so popular, I think, are the setting is really cool. The alternative history, the mechs with the scythe and the, you know, everything about it looks really good. Gameplay wise, absolutely love how streamlined the mechanics are. The action selection system is really nice. The way that you improve one of your top actions by taking a cube off it, which uncovers a space, making that action better. You then move the cube to the bottom row, which covers up a cost, making the bottom action better. Oh, it's just beautiful. Just absolutely love the way that it works. Now, the problem I have with Scythe is when I'm playing it against people who actually know what they're doing. Because the last time I played, it was quite a bad experience, just because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was doing the actions, I understood the rules of the game, but by the end of the game, the other people had just put it together so well. It's about, you know, getting everything correct in the right order, and I hadn't done that. Now, that's not a problem with the game, it's just my experience at playing the game wasn't really good because I didn't feel at all competitive because I didn't really know what I was doing. The only way to fix that is for me to play it more, and it is a game that I do want to play more because I want to have more of an opinion about the game. A number of my friends who've played it 10, 15 times have said, that's it, they're done with it now. There isn't really much variability or replayability once they've played it that many times. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well that's fair enough, but 10 or 15 times to play a game, is that enough? I mean, most of the games in my collection I haven't played that many times. So to me, if I'd played the game 15 times and enjoyed it, and then thought, right, I'm done with that game now, there's nothing more to it, I'm like, okay, that's fine, you know, 15 times is enough. But I get what they're saying is that they feel that all the games play out, you know, in a similar way, and there isn't that much variability to them. I don't know, I need to play it more myself. There's expansions for the game that have come out. The latest one, Rise of Fenris, which added a legacy aspect to the game, which some people have said is really cool. I've heard from a number of people that it's not actually that great, but the other expansions are really good. So yeah, Scythe, I need to play it more. I don't have a copy in my collection. I would probably not turn down a game of it just because it is a game that I do want to play more, and I've enjoyed the games that I've played of it apart from the last one, but that was down to, as I say, that was down to me. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and as I said at the start, this video and a lot of the other content that I produce is only possible through my Patreon campaign, and I'm going to make it the next goal of my Patreon campaign that every year I'm going to do one of these. We'll do the voting again, I'll do another top 10, and we'll compare and see how things changed from the year before, which is interesting. I'd like to do it, and hopefully if you help me make my next goal on the Patreon campaign, then I can do these moving forward. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.
Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.